Blintzes, right, Blintzes. Sweet cheese Blintzes. Action. Hi everyone, I'm Saffitz. Welcome to my home kitchen. Today I'm showing you a very special and personal recipe from What's for Dessert. These are my sweet cheese Blintzes. It is based on a recipe that my grandma used to make with my mom. It is a dessert, but it's also kind of a breakfast or a snack. It's so good and they're really fun to make. The story behind this recipe is that my grandmother, my mother's mother, was actually not known as a cook, but she had a handful of recipes that she made very, very well. And one of those was Blintzes. So Blintzes are a kind of filled eggy pancake. It is sort of a traditional dish in Ashkenazi Jewish culture, and they're super delicious. This version is very lightly sweet, so it's actually something that I think would be great for breakfast or like a kind of a sweetish snack, but also for dessert. When my mom was a kid, she has memories of making Blintzes with my grandmother. And my grandmother used to cook the pancakes 2 at a time in skillets on the stovetop. She would bang them out onto the countertop on like laid out paper bags, and my mom used to fill them and they would pack them into shoeboxes and freeze them. So this is a vivid food memories that my mom had when she was a kid, but by the time I was older, my grandma wasn't really cooking anymore, and so I never had her version. So my mom and I developed them together, and it was like a fun kind of special thing that we got to share when I was making this recipe. So ingredient-wise, for the pancake, I have whole milk, all-purpose flour, 4 large eggs, some melted butter, and just a little bit of sugar and kosher salt. For the filling, I have 1 pound or 16 ounces of farmer's cheese, 8 ounces of cream cheese cut into pieces. Both of those are cold. Pinch of kosher salt, some granulated sugar, 1 large egg, and some vanilla extract. Then for the apricot compote, because traditionally Blintzes are served with like a fruit sauce, and you could do any fruit sauce you like, you don't have to do this one. But for my version, I have dried apricots, honey, a lemon, and then for assembly and serving, I have some melted butter and honey for drizzling on top. You will need a blender. In What's for Dessert, my default is a hand blender. It's a really inexpensive, useful piece of equipment, but if you have like a standard blender, use that. You'll also need a skillet. So the recipe calls for a nonstick skillet. I'm going to use my made-in enameled cast iron, beautiful red skillet for both the pancakes and for cooking the Blintzes. That's really it. And then you'll just need a small saucepan for making that compote, which is kind of optional, but it's up to you. Before I get into the recipe, I want to thank our partners at Made In, the creators of beautiful cookware and bakeware. So Made In last year came out with their enameled cast iron Dutch oven. We made bread in it. I use it all the time for like lots of cooking and baking. And they have this brand new enameled cast iron skillet. This is handcrafted in France, hand enameled. The cast iron has incredible heat retention. It can go from the stovetop to the oven. It's oven safe up to 580 degrees Fahrenheit. You can use this skillet for shallow frying, sauteing, searing. You can go right into the oven. You can even bake in it. So I'm going to use it for making both the Blintzes, the pancakes, because it has this kind of naturally non-stick surface, plus cooking the Blintzes. I want to thank Made In so much for sponsoring this episode. You can get 10% off the skillet, the Dutch oven, and anything else over at madeincookware.com. So check out the description below for the code you can use. And thank you so much to our partners at Made In. All right, let's go make some Blintzes. I have 3 main components for the Blintzes. I have the pancakes, I have the filling, and then I have my compote. I'm gonna start by making the pancake batter, because that needs to rest for a little bit. I mean, it should rest before I cook them. So I have a cup of whole milk. I'm gonna add my 4 large eggs. Everything is room temperature, that's important. It's important because we're adding butter to this, and so if I have cold eggs or cold milk, then the butter is gonna solidify, and I'm just not gonna get as smooth a batter. So the pancakes for Blintzes, they're similar to crepes, but they are a little bit eggier. And what's interesting about the cooking method for Blintzes is that you actually only cook the pancakes on one side. Then you fill them and they get cooked on the opposite side. Then I'm adding a little bit of sugar, some kosher salt. I have 5 tablespoons of melted cooled butter. And then I'm gonna add my flour. If you don't have a blender, or if you, for whatever reason, prefer to do this by hand, you can. Just use a whisk. My flour is gonna go in. So obviously this takes like 2 seconds. I'm just going to blend all of this. If you're using a hand blender, make sure it's fully submerged before you turn it on. So I just want to scrape down the sides of the bowl and also the blender itself and the bottom, just to make sure I have no trapped flour. That's a common issue. But you can see it makes a very kind of smooth, fairly liquid batter. You don't need to blend this beyond just getting everything combined and smooth. Okay, so that's it. Reserve your hand blender because I'm going to use it also for the filling. And now this can just go off to the side and rest at room temperature. So I'm just going to set this behind me, actually right next to the skillet. That is the entire pancake batter. And now I'm going to turn to my filling. So I have a lemon here, which I set aside for the apricot compote, but I'm going to grate the zest of it first. So I'm going to add about a tablespoon of fresh lemon zest to the filling. This just helps to brighten it, and that lemon flavor just pretty much goes well with any fruit topping. It just brightens everything up. And then I'm going to save this lemon because I'm going to add 2 tablespoons to my apricot compote of the juice. The recipe calls for a medium lemon, so that's going to be most, if not all, of the zest. Okay, so to this I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of sugar. It's very, very lightly sweetened. This is really not a particularly sweet recipe. So 1 large egg. The filling has a little bit of egg because when I cook it, I want that filling to kind of like set in a sense. Now, farmer's cheese is a fresh cheese that has been like strained or pressed to remove a lot of the water. So it's very similar to cottage cheese, but it has a finer curd and it's just drier. So I don't want too liquidy of a filling. I did actually test this recipe with cottage cheese because I love cottage cheese. My mom loves cottage cheese and my grandma loved cottage cheese. So it just felt like, I don't know, it just like worked, but it was too liquidy. So farmer's cheese really works better, and that's the more traditional filling. So I'm going to grab my hand blender and I'm just going to blend this together. This is going to be fairly thick. And both the farmer's cheese and the cream cheese are cold. I developed this recipe with my mom because I didn't have really any experience blintz making. I've made crepes a million times, like, you know, it's very similar, but I didn't have the taste memory to be able to kind of determine like this is, you know, what I'm going for. So I made it with my mom. We had a lot of fun developing it, and she was like, this is like Nanny's recipe. So I'm just going to give this a stir to get everything incorporated. Never stick your finger in at the end of the hand mixer unless it's turned off. One thing I forgot is vanilla extract, just a hint of vanilla. You'll have a little bit of graininess, and that's from the farmer's cheese. That's really normal, but you don't really taste the graininess. It just kind of reads as like super smooth and creamy. This is nicely combined. I'm going to scrape down the blade. Detach it or unplug it before you get in there though, for safety. So this recipe makes 16 blintzes, which is kind of a lot. You could very easily have the recipe. You could also very easily make the full recipe, freeze half a la Nanny, and then cook, you know, the other half. So I think it's actually so nice. Like I have some of these frozen here, and one morning Harris woke up and was like, what's for breakfast? And I was like, I don't know, you want some blintzes? And that's what we had, and it was just kind of great to be able to pull that out of the freezer. They cook pretty quickly. I have instructions in the recipe for how to cook them from frozen. Basically, you take them right out of the freezer into the pan with some butter with the lid on, so they steam and thaw out, and then you take off the lid and fry them. So that's the basic method. Okay.
Like dumplings.
Like dumplings. So here's my filling. I just scraped everything down into the bottom of the bowl. This can chill while I make the compote and the pancakes. So I'm just gonna get this in the fridge, and then I'll show you how to make that apricot topping. So for my apricot compote, I'm starting with dry apricots, a product I love. I love the flavor of dried apricots. So I have 8 ounces. I want to roughly chop them up. These are very juicy apricots, so these are actually going to cook down probably pretty quickly. If you have really dry, firmer apricots, it might take a little bit longer, but either way. This is just gonna go into my saucepan. And I'm gonna add 2 tablespoons of honey. One thing that I love from my childhood is breakfast for dessert. Breakfast for dinner. Probably of all the recipes in the book, this is probably the one that's like the least desserty. This really is kind of like an anytime type of dish. A pinch of salt. I'm gonna add 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. Quick note, I wasn't supposed to add the lemon juice at the beginning. I was supposed to wait till the compote was cooked and then stir it in. So it won't have quite the fresh, zippy lemon flavor, but it's totally fine. So I have that zested lemon. 1/2 will probably give you 2 tablespoons lemon juice. And then 2 cups of water. So that water is going to help everything cook down. The apricots will break down and become really jammy and soft, which is what we want. I'm going to get this onto the stove to start cooking. I'm gonna bring it up to a simmer, turn it down, and it's just gonna cook really slowly. The water will evaporate, apricots will break down, and I'm gonna get this delicious jammy mixture, but it's still gonna have a little bit of texture from the fruit. So I took the compote, took it up to a boil on medium, and reduced it to medium-low, so it's just kind of simmering away. And I'm gonna periodically come over and mash it just to make sure that those apricots are breaking down. And while that's cooking, it should take 25 to 30 minutes to sort of reduce down into this nice compote. I'm gonna cook the pancakes. I have my beautiful made-in enameled cast iron skillet here that I'm gonna cook them in. Now the recipe calls for an 8-inch nonstick. I'm gonna make slightly larger pancakes in this skillet than I would doing it in an 8-inch. The made-in enameled cast iron is 11-inch. I have some melted butter for greasing the skillet. And then for holding the pancakes when they're done cooking, I have just a dinner plate here with a kitchen towel over it. And the thing about blintzes is they're actually only cooked on one side initially. Then we fill them, we get cooked again. I have my skillet preheating on medium. So I'm gonna start by just brushing on a light coating of butter. So when you add the batter, tilt the skillet a little bit. You want to work it around the skillet until you have a circle. Okay, so that looks great. So you kind of just want like one even coating. And we are going to cook this until, again, just on the one side. We are going to cook this until the surface is matte, so it's no longer shiny, everything is set, and that little frilly edge of the pancake is going to turn a little bit golden brown and start to curl and like pull away from the sides of the skillet. And it's only about a minute per pancake, depending on your heat. Ideally, you have a little bit of golden browning. It almost gets like a kind of webbing of golden brown on the cooked side. Make sure you periodically kind of check on your compote so that the bottom isn't sticking. Do they say not to use metal utensils on this? To use more butter next time.
It's like the first pancake.
Yeah, the first pancake is a little wonky always. Oh God. More butter, more butter, more butter, more butter. I'm starting to see a little golden brown edge. I'm just gonna go around with my spatula, make sure it's not sticking. I'm gonna turn this out onto my lined plate. So this is a nice amount of cooking on this pancake. And it's only on the one side. So you can see I have beautiful kind of even golden brown. Cast iron has great heat distribution, so it's really even. And then when I fill them, I'm gonna fill the cooked side, exposing the uncooked side, and then it gets fried again. So the other side does eventually get cooked. So now I'm going to repeat that cooking process. I'll show you one more time. More butter, more batter. Then we're gonna have all the pancakes. Then it'll be time to fill the crepes. Pancakes, whatever you wanna call them. This is the first time I've used this skillet. It is very nonstick. I mean, obviously it's greased, but like it really, for a cast iron, I just love the enamel. So the compote's almost done. I just cooked all of my pancakes. I put a kitchen towel over top just so they don't dry out. We're gonna fill the blintzes, but I'm gonna keep this butter and my skillet here because we're gonna fry them in the exact same skillet. I have my cold filling. This has just been hanging out in the fridge while I cooked the pancakes and the compote. The compote I pulled off. This is the final texture. Not so thick that it doesn't kind of like fall off the spoon, but nice and jammy and soft. When you fill the blintzes, this part's really fun. The pancakes themselves are nice and flexible, so you still want to be careful though because they can be delicate. And these are actually still a little bit warm. So I'm gonna work on a towel so that the steam doesn't make it like stick to the countertop. When I turned them out of the skillet, I turned them out upside down so that the brown side is up. And that is how you're gonna fill them. I'm going to scrape that filling into the center of the pancake. Then use my spatula to kind of work it into a line that's about 4 inches long. I kind of like to do the bottom. Then you fold in the sides like so, and then you just roll it up. Okay, and that's it. So this is your filled blintz. This is the point at which if you want to make these ahead of time, you can freeze them, or we're just gonna cook them straight away. I have that little seam side, like I've worked that edge of the pancake down and around, so it's gonna rest on that side to keep it closed. So my filling is gonna go onto the center of my pancake, browned side up, so that when you fill it and you roll it up, you have the uncooked side facing out. The bottom goes up and over, then you're gonna fold in the sides and then roll it up. You have just like the cutest little package. I'm gonna repeat that process with the remaining pancakes, get them all filled and on my plate, and then we'll move over to the stove again and cook them. I set that skillet back over medium heat. So I'm gonna add a couple of tablespoons of that melted butter that I have left over from cooking the pancakes. If you don't have quite that much left over, again, just melt a little bit more. And then I'm gonna put the blintzes in one at a time and put them on that seam side. That will kind of really seal them because they're gonna cook first on one side. See if I can fit that last one in here. Well, that one's gonna get frozen and someone's gonna have a single blintz treat one day. I wanna cook these until that first side is golden brown all over. And what's gonna happen is not only is that pancake gonna cook on the other side and it's gonna get like a little bit crispy and really delicious, but the egg in that filling is going to cook through and set. So we're gonna get this really nice, creamy, slightly custardy filling. So it'll just take a couple minutes per side. So I just checked, beautiful golden brown. I'm gonna flip them and be really gentle, but they look so good. You can see how evenly they brown. So these will just cook on that second side until they're also golden brown. I turned down the heat a little bit. They're super hot when they come out of the skillet, so let them rest a little bit, but then we're gonna eat them. I have my apricot and lemon compote. My blintz have had a chance to rest. You just don't want to eat them like super piping hot from the skillet because the filling will be a little bit loose and runny. So you want it to kind of cool off a little bit and set. They're like little purses, like little golden brown, eggy, creamy, delicious purses. And there's something so appealing about how they look. Just makes me want to eat them. So I'm going to top it with a little bit of my compote and then a little drizzle of honey. There's so little sugar in here that I think it could use a bit of extra sweetness. So what I like is that when you cut into it, the part that's browned, like cleanly, it's like a little bit crispy. And then the edges of the pancake are softer. So you get lots of different textures in there, plus this delicious, creamy, kind of perfectly set filling. Yum. Blintzes are such a good food because I love farmer's cheese. I love the kind of eggy, crepe-like pancake. Also the lemon zest. I would miss it if it weren't there. It's such a nice addition here. I do feel like it makes it appropriate for breakfast, but also definitely feels like dessert. We're filming right now, but I made Nanny's blintzes. I told the story about how you would help Nanny make blintzes and she would bang them out onto the counter 2 at a time on paper bags and you would roll them up and put them in shoe boxes.
Yes.
Vinny has a question.
What kind of shoes were they?
What kind of shoes came from the shoe boxes?
1950s, 1960.
I see. But
1970s.
Nanny shoes. Nanny shoes.
You know, whatever shoebox she had, whatever shoes it was. We weren't particular about what kind of shoebox it was. It
Got
just
it.
had to be a shoebox. And a lot of times she would save the shoebox.
To reuse.
So, yeah, and reuse it.
I mean, that was Nanny's thing. Nanny used her lipstick until it was just like the metal like nub.
She only ever had one Ziploc bag in every size because she kept washing them out.
Yeah, I do that. We both do that.
She was a good recycler.
Yeah, totally. Okay, all right, bye.
Thanks. All right, bye.
I love that this is a family recipe. It makes me think of my grandmother, and I'm grateful for the family recipes that have been passed down on my mom's side. Blintzes, mandel bread, poppy seed cake, recipes that I love, that my family loves. I hope you try this one. It's so much fun to make. It is kind of all the recipes in the book, the kind of like most you can eat anytime type thing. With or without the apricot compote, totally up to you. And thank you to our partners at Made In for sponsoring this episode. Check out their enameled cast iron skillet, their Dutch oven, and their entire line of cookware and bakeware over at madeincookware.com. You can get 10% off your total order with the code in the description below, so don't forget to check that out. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you try this recipe, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Interesting, so you would have a sweet blintz as like a side dish?
Yeah, but they weren't as sweet as yours.
Mine aren't that sweet.
I know, but hers were even less sweet, and she used farmer's cheese too.
Hello, yeah, hello, I use farmer's cheese.